Rated M for mature. What is the purpose of violence? The purpose of violence varies widely, serving as a tool for control and political gain, a response to negative emotions like fear or anger, or a source of positive feelings like dominance and pleasure. Violence can be used to obtain information, enforce political goals, protect self-esteem, enact revenge, achieve a perceived greater good, or even to establish a social order. It is often multi-causal, stemming from a complex interplay of psychological, social, and political factors. What, therefore, does it mean when a person decides to choose violence? Here to talk about that is a writer who wrote a book called They Choose Violence. It's not what you think it is. And let's have him discuss what it is. Mr. Sheldon Allen.
What's going on, man? How you doing, dude?
How you doing, brother?
Chilling, man. You said that rated M for mature, just like the video game commercial, by the way.
I've had a lot of crack. It's the only video games I play. Yo, man, look, the moment this book dropped, internet was all abuzz. Dang, oh, did you see that book? They Choose Violence. I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. It's unlike anything I have seen in recent times.
Appreciate it.
In a positive way. On the one hand, on the surface level, when you read the solicit for the book, let's bring that up, Derek. So I'm going to skip over this part real quick. First thing that grabs you when you go to the LCS is the covers.
Dope AF. Raza.
You are just blessed with the dopest covers. Talk about that.
Man, so the regular cover artist for the main covers is Raza, and I wish I could say he was my idea, but he was recommended by Axel Alonso, the editor at AWA. And he's like, listen, man, this guy, he takes the material and he visualizes it in ways that you could never imagine. And I had a cover already, which was it's a pretty clever cover. I'm not gonna even really say what it is because I might use it another time. But then when I saw Raza's cover with the Lady Justice, I was like, bro, it's like when you think you're good at like a sport. I use a lot of sports analogy, and then you get on a field with somebody, and you're like, I don't belong in the same arena as this person. That's how I felt with the cover I originally had versus the one that Raza got. And then Axel, he takes it a step further. He's like, I think he just casually drops it. I think we're gonna get Kyle Baker to do the variant. I was like, wait, what? Kyle Baker's going to do the variant as well? He's like, yeah, man.
Who is this person giving you these hookups on these covers?
Axel Alonso, man, editor-in-chief
of
AWA, former editor-in-chief,
Marvel editor
at Marvel Comics,
in charge of those hip hop variant covers. Wow,
he's that guy, man. He's that guy.
All right, so you start your first of all. So what's up to everybody in the chat? I'm remiss. I apologize. What's up to everybody in the chat? Thank you for joining us. MD Johnny, Marwan Williams, Pericles, Dragon Balls, Kevin Pitts in the building. All our regulars, thank you for joining us. Please like this video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. You open the book with this quote from Malcolm X. I don't even call it violence when it's self-defense. I call it intelligence. Now, violence as a means of self-defense is common sense. It's nonsensical. It's understandable. Even if you don't agree with it, you can understand the concept of self-preservation. Um, but that's not what you're talking about here. Here's this quote. My hope with They Choose Violence is to muse about what a full-scale embrace of violence would truly look like. Its feasibility, the consequences, the collateral damage, the emotional toll, the descent into darkness, the morality of all. But because believe it or not, this story is ultimately about you. No, for real, seriously. Black, white, Latino, him, her, them, they, conservative, liberal, woke, based, red pilled, whatever your identity, choose your flavor. It doesn't matter. It's all about what you and how you receive these pages. I want you to use your story to ask difficult questions about your own views. I want you to challenge your own allegiances. I want you to be uncomfortable at how comfortable you are with some of the material. I want you to examine whether your belief system is built upon a solid foundation. I love this quote because I think it truly summarizes the multitude and mix of emotions I have and thoughts I have when I read these pages. Why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, it's important for me. I've always said that with any book that I wrote, it's very important for me. I never want to come off as being preachy. I never want to come off as, message. I never want to tell somebody how they should be receiving the material. I always like for them to come to their own conclusions. And over the course of the story, with the twists and the turns, we started with that Malcolm X quote for a reason, because that's where we start. That's our starting point. By the time we get to that last issue, you'll see some of the things that have changed. And okay, maybe this violence isn't necessarily in the name of self-defense. Maybe it's just truly in the name of violence. And so I just wanted, like you said, I just wanted this whole little mix of just emotions and just thoughts. We're gonna present, I think, when we get to issue 4, I know we'll tease that a little bit later, probably the most interesting character I've ever created, certainly, and he's going to be super controversial. And it's very important to me that I'm not preaching to the reader. I'm not preaching to the audience. You know, I really don't have an opinion one way or another on a lot of these things. I'm just interested in observing, if that kind of sort of makes sense to you.
Yeah, I mean, you raise questions without really leaning one way or the other in terms of answers. You just here are some questions, and it makes you question your own values and your own thought processes about what happens within this book.
Well,
Um,
it's important for me. Again, I always just kind of sort of lean back and go back to all the books that I wrote. Except I wrote a Spider-Man book. That's probably like the only exception. But I don't necessarily look at characters as a good guy or a bad guy necessarily. I don't look at it as, all right, this is the hero, this is the villain. Main character, co-starring character, but good and evil has always been sort of a matter of perspective for me. So, it's always interesting to hear how people receive certain personalities that I've written, or certain, plot twists and things like that.
yeah, most people, or I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people fall into that realm of the gray, not good, not evil, just people. People are complex. They're multi-layered and multifaceted. Um, and they may it's a scale. It's you know a realm of possibilities in terms of where they fall on the moral timeline. You know what I mean? Um, and these three main characters really test that. Really test that. So let's dive into it.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about these three main characters. Talk about who these three women are.
So we got Karen, we got Laneka, and we got Deidre. They're HBCU grads. The college is Florida Memorial. If you know, you know. Um, so initially, our point of view character for the first issue is Laneka, and she starts off in a totally different major, and then she witnesses this police tragedy where they kill an innocent person, and she changes her major and she decides to become a lawyer. over the years, she just gets tired of seeing the same thing happening over and over and over again. And there's this one particular incident where a young man, he gets shot. Um, the cop gets acquitted, and it kind of sort of is her breaking point. Um, I want to talk about that sequence a little bit as well too. I, I wanted to expand upon it a little bit, but you only have so much time. But you know, the individual who's killed, the teenager who's killed, he's got all this promise, he's got these scholarships, he's super talented, and in its own right, that seems to, make it more sad. But I kind of sort of wanted to add it, it wouldn't matter if he was a hoodlum or, a thug or the biggest criminal in the world. It still wouldn't have made it, any more or less tragic. So that was kind of sort of important to me. I wanted to just mention that real briefly as well, even if it wasn't necessarily uh,
No,
emphasizing
I
the
mean, I get
story,
it,
but yeah.
because ultimately what you see here is a
Hmm.
police officer murdering someone,
Hmm.
shooting them in the back. They're unarmed. They're shooting an unarmed person in the back. By
Point blank
no
period.
stretch of the imagination, by no set of circumstances, is that justified or warranted. This person is fleeing the police officer. They're not causing violence. They're not showing any violence. There's no imminent threat of this person fleeing. Um, they're not armed. Um, and he shoots them in the back. Um, that's murder.
The
That's murder.
execution.
He executes this person and is acquitted. It's a story we've heard far too often. And Laneka, who's an attorney, I believe she's a prosecutor, right?
Correct.
In the Miami-Dade system, um, and whose boss reminds me very much of the Miami-Dade state attorney. But I won't touch that. um, but anyway, she ultimately it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, because this is someone who is a law enforcement officer in her own right. She's a state attorney, assistant state attorney. She sees this wrongdoing and says, "You know what? That's enough. I became a lawyer because I wanted to fight injustice. Even when I'm serving justice, injustice occurs and gets away with it within the system." She's fed up. So she meets with her three friends, one of whom, Karen on the left, is a police officer herself. Um, and she's sharing her thoughts, and she's like, "We need to seek justice." And that's where it starts,
Hmm.
under the premise of justice. Let's take this guy out and seek justice for that young man. Right? Wrong? They want to become vigilantes. This starts from a mindset of vigilantism. We know this guy is guilty. He was acquitted due to the imperfections in the system. She can say, "I recognize the imperfections in the system because you, Karen, you're a cop. You know this guy's corrupt. I'm an assistant state attorney. I've seen the evidence. I've seen what's going on. I know this is not right. I know he's guilty. Um, let's seek justice and right this wrong." Whether you agree or not, you can at least say, "I understand." You can't say this is any different than, if you're a fan of the Punisher, because
At a minimum, even if you don't agree with the method, the reasoning and the rationale, you can agree could be seen as noble. Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
right.
I can see it started off as noble. I may necessarily not agree with the method that they're going to do, but I see why they're thinking and feeling the way that they do. It's understandable and it's perfectly reasonable.
There's a moment of clarity, a moment of hesitance in Laneka's mind where she's like, "Yeah, but we want to seek justice, but murder? I mean, is that something we can really do?" And it occurs to her when she's talking to her friends, they've done it. Deidre, is this Deidre?
That's Deidre, correct. She's the one with the medical
Talk,
background.
talk about this.
Yeah, so she started off as a med student, and she had this quote unquote sugar daddy who was a physician when she was in med school. And, he basically shares with her during Pillow Talk, where she gets a lot of her information, as we'll see throughout the series. Hey, sometimes I just let people die in the hospital. I get like a little kick out of it. And so he brings her along one time, and they just pretty much just watch and let a person die. She's like, you really don't feel anything. You just kind of sort of just go about your business. And that's kind of the first little nudge for Laneka. Like, really? Like, is that easy?
The
It's just
next
like
nudge.
to take a life.
Then the next nudge. Karen.
And then the next nudge, of course, is Karen, who's a police officer as well. Via the profession, she's dealt with that. And she's aware. She's like, well, it's not even necessarily the killing the person that you got to kind of sort of worry about, as she says later in the issue. It's the other things. But yeah, just killing a person, it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. That's when you start to like, wow. It's one thing to make a decision that we're going to go ahead and do this. Another thing when your two co-conspirators are like, yeah, we murked a couple people already. It's not that big a deal. And you start to realize there's something wrong with these ladies. There's something not all there. Something different about them. But they begin the process, they start training. In your head, what's the theme music being played as they start doing these training montages?
Man, that's a good question, actually. And you know what? I think you stumped me on that one, because usually I have music every issue actually ends with the song. Actually, I usually have my sequences set to a soundtrack. I'm
That's
not
why
even,
I asked, because you made it part of the storyline too, where they're like,
yeah,
yeah, let's use the music.
for this particular sequence, man. I'm not even sure. Maybe like something like Victory. Well, I mean, I don't know if Diddy's still cancer or whatever, but it's still the Victory beat. I know it's the Rocky sample. Maybe something like that.
You should seriously, based on how much music is a part of this series, you should make yourself a Spotify playlist, a They Choose Violence Spotify playlist.
That's an unreal idea. Actually, that's insane. I think I'm actually going to do that. Actually, I'm going to steal that idea. I appreciate it.
Post that up, and I'll share it. All right, so
I would go with Victory on that sequence.
say again.
I would go with Victory on that sequence.
Victory. All right. They become ninja assassin ladies, so to speak. They train themselves up, highly detailed between the three of them. And what's interesting is, based on their backgrounds, Deidre having a medical background, Laneka having a legal background, and then Karen having the criminal, the law enforcement background. Between the three of them, they're able to put together crimes and get away with it. Like, they're able to figure out, how can we plan this so there's no evidence lying around pointing towards us, and get away with it.
Quite efficiently, actually.
Quite efficiently. They find the guy who murdered the boy, and they take him out. They do it actually on one of their birthdays, which they ultimately decide to make a theme.
Yeah, it kind of becomes symbolic.
They're like, why stop there? We just took out a cog on the wheel. Why don't we take out the wheel? Let's go with the other parts of what makes this white supremacy issue a thing. Let's take out the lawyers that defend them, the judges that let them off, the lobbyists that make laws that protect them. And they start taking them out one by one. And they enjoy it. What does this moment mean for you?
Well, this moment right here, especially when you compare it to the second issue, they're already tight. They're already good friends. They already have a bond. But somehow, some way, these murders in the name of justice have brought them even closer. It's actually strengthened their bond. And that's just something to give thought to, because again, if you think of it, if you think of the three ladies as our heroes, which is perfectly fine, if you think of them as the good guys, it's not something you give much thought about. But if you're just kind of sort of observing it, you're like, wow, killing people is actually bringing you closer together. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe that's something to give you pause, and you're kind of just like, all right, let me take a step back. Like, what's really going on here? Is this really about what it's supposed to be about?
Yeah, it's hard for me as the story goes on for me to think of them as heroes. And that's what makes the story kind of dope, because they appeal to your certain sensibilities at the beginning. You got the Malcolm X quote at the beginning about using self-defense. You've got the the righteous cause of, man, this bad cop murdered this beautiful, hopeful, bright, futured young man, just murdered him, and he needs to be brought to justice. So you have that sense of righteousness, and you're like, you know what? I could see them as being heroes, vigilantes, no different than the Punisher. But
Mm-hmm.
as things start to progress, they start to escalate, and then the way they enjoy it, and then the it's a time period piece. I think I failed to mention that.
Mm-hmm.
This story is set in what, 2016 or so.
Initially about 2015, and then it bleeds into 2016. Yeah.
Something happens that changes the complexion of America. Darth Cheeto is elected to office, and that changes the game for everybody, because with him comes a new level of, let's say, forthright white supremacy. No longer have to hide behind the white sheets. It's out there in public and in office. Changes the game. That's how issue 1 ends. Issue 2, you have a recurring theme of see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. We'll talk about that on these covers.
Again, it just kind of sort of just goes back to that matter of perspective, right? Of what's good, what's bad versus bad. It's where you sit. It's where you stand. It's how you see it necessarily isn't how somebody else sees it. Or if you see it at all, if it's something maybe that you can, you have certain sensitivities toward, or you can agree with it, I'm gonna keep that to myself. I'm not gonna speak about that. It doesn't really bother me. It's something I can keep bottled up and caged up. So that's kind of sort of what it represents to me. That's kind of the way that I've always tried to explain it and emphasize it. That's how I've always saw it. So Raza, he did his thing on that cover. He definitely tapped in and he was locked in when he did that one.
You know what's cool? You've got your Raza covers as cover A. Cover B, you've got these blaxploitation covers.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And if you're a fan of the blaxploitation era films, particularly Pam Grier and stuff like that, it's kind of like the first female action hero, so to speak. And that's kind of the vibe that you're getting, because that's what a lot of those films were about. Oh, going after the man who killed my man, and so I'm going to go undercover and I'm going to take out the man by any means necessary. That's kind of the vibe that you get initially in this. But the story
thing about blaxploitation films, if you really think about it, is beneath that surface, there's always a real social issue that was being dissected. There's a complexity to it. Sometimes it was explicitly stated. A lot of times it was implicit, but there's always something up underneath the surface of those blaxploitation films.
And such with the story of this book, this series. On the one hand, you have the concept of, we're going after white supremacists. We're going to use violence to combat white supremacy. We're going to use violence, as I said at the beginning, in terms of the purpose of violence. Sometimes violence can be used as a political tool to affect change. Um, was it Frederick Douglass who said, "There's no progress without struggle," or something to that effect? Um, Violence is a mechanism of change, but changes can take various forms because you know for every what is it? I'm full of quotes tonight. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We're going to get into that.
Uh-huh.
So, issue 2. I failed to mention this. The first issue was written where Laneka was the narrator. It was from her perspective. And the first 3 issues, each one of these characters, it's from their perspective. Next issue, I believe this one is from Karen's perspective, correct?
That's correct. That's from Karen, the police officer.
So tell us what's going on in issue 2.
So issue 2, Trump has kind of sort of been elected, not kind of been elected, he was elected. And the ladies, they were in the midst of having a grand old time. And they said, well, maybe we need to stop. There's going to be a new level of scrutiny on us. Jeff Sessions and Trump and Stephen Miller, these guys are talking about this American carnage stuff. And they would just love to have a black face for that. So, let's kind of sort of chill. We kind of were sliding when Obama was president because his Justice Department, they kind of had sympathies towards what we were doing. They knew these guys were guilty, so they kind of was letting it slide. But we're not gonna be able to slide when Trump is president. So let's kind of sort of like chill on that.
Yeah, I mean the FBI. Karen describes that the FBI is actually pretty good at their jobs. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're pretty efficient at sniffing out crime, and they actually come up with some very good clues as to who's doing these crimes, but they kind of sympathize, so they don't really push the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as an aside, Karen is the cop, and she is like the most. We associate colloquially the term Karen with like a certain type of white woman, right?
Lady on the phone at the park.
Right, right. Karen in your story is not that. She is everything the opposite of what we colloquially use the term Karen for. Was that intentional?
It was intentional, and I also I know a real life Karen, a black Karen, who this one was kind of inspired by as well. Um, so it's a bit of both. I keep it 100 with you. I didn't get many notes at all on They Choose Violence, and believe it or not, it's the least amount of editorial notes I've ever gotten on a project, if you could believe that. And
Was Axel your editor on this?
yeah, he was Axel and the gentleman named Michael Coast as well. And they both were they both were incredible. So most of the things they said weren't even really editorial notes. It was mostly suggestions. And one of the suggestions was, hey, maybe we should change her name from Karen, because when you hear Karen, it evokes, a certain image. And I like, no, she's named Karen for a reason. I want to play with those expectations as well. And like I said, it's also kind of sort of inspired by somebody who I know in real life as well.
So we learn a little bit more about all their where their journey has taken since they started doing this. They did their first few instances of serving justice, and they decided to take a break, and they kind of drift apart because, as you pointed out, committing these acts of violence drove them closer together. And when they stopped, they kind of drifted apart because it was that violence that was really kind of bonding them to an extent.
Uh-huh.
But they still miss the rush. They still miss the life.
It's a kick. It's a fix almost. It's their
Right.
high.
Right. So this, what started out as violence as a means of seeking justice, becomes something else. And this is where you start to see the evolution of their intent and motivation by committing these acts of violence. Because they kind of retire, so to speak. Their first, well, talk about what happens here at this point.
Well, they stop, as you said, and they kind of just drift into their own lives as professional adults tend to do, spending less time with each other. Um, they try to hang out, but just hanging out even feels like work because that adrenaline is gone, that rush is gone, and they're pretty much just on their own, just going day to day, doing what they do. And Deidre, she pulls up and she surprises Karen for her birthday, which Karen kind of is like, why you haven't even done this in so long? I don't even like celebrating my birthday. And Deidre's like, no, we're going to go to the Zora Neale Hurston Festival, which is actually a thing,
outside of Orlando, right?
right? Which is just outside of Orlando, actually. And
all three of them. Where did all three of them live?
Miami. They live in Miami.
305.
305.
All right.
Well, we gotta be careful. You know about Miami, so anybody who's not from Florida, anything south of West Palm Beach is Miami.
It is. Everything is 3 counties.
Yeah, and this is like, oh, where you going? You're like, oh, I'm going to like Tamarack. You're like, where? He's like, I'm going to Miami, just to keep it simple. So,
all right. So they decide to hop in the car and drive from Miami up to Eatonville, Florida, the oldest black township in America, for the Zora Neale Hurston Festival, which I've been to quite a few times, at least presumptively. So as they're driving up there, Karen's in a bit of a funk. She's like, yeah, it's my birthday. I don't really want to do this, but yeah, y'all want to take me out, so I suppose we'll do it. She's like, relax. You're gonna enjoy it. We're gonna rent an Airbnb and we're gonna have a good time. And it turns out that the gift that they have for her is very unique. Talk about this.
They've got this guy, this quote unquote white whale, so to speak, of injustice.
Somebody, not just any white whale. We're talking Florida. I live in Florida. I believe you live in Florida as well. I immediately picked up that you must have been a Floridian to have all these references. But one of the most seminal events when we talk about the injustices of white supremacy in recent times happened in Sanford, Florida, which is not too far from Eatonville, where the Zora Neale Hurston Festival is. And that was the murder of Trayvon Martin. That was a watershed event in our history. I think it was kind of a culmination of a lot of different events going on, but that one really hit national news, international news. The trial was aired throughout the world. President Obama even chimed in with a line that really shook everyone when he said, that could have been my son. And I think a lot of us felt that.
I think it's one of those things, used to hear, my grandparents or the elders, where you were when Pearl Harbor happened. You know where you were when JFK was assassinated. Right. For us who were a bit younger, you know where you were when 9/11 happened, or maybe a little older, Rodney King tape or the O.J. Simpson verdict.
O.J. Simpson, yeah.
The Trayvon Martin, from the death to the actual verdict, is one of those moments where you remember where you are.
Moreover, it's an event that kind of really showed where the divisions on race are in America. It's one of those things that if you talked about it at the water cooler at your job, you're going to have differing opinions. And those differing opinions are going to shock the hell out of you and reveal a lot about the people that are around you. I remember having discussions with coworkers who immediately started to say, well, he must have been into something. He must have been some type of thug. Like their perceptions of what happened, you have two completely different perspectives, two completely different interpretations of those string of events.
I wish I could say that I was woke enough using it before it became a pejorative, the correct sense of the word woke here. I wish I could say I was woke enough back then to realize what you were saying as it was happening, but I don't think it truly hit me. And, I know better. I'm a child of the South. My parents are from the South, the deep South. You know, we're aware of these things, but even then, maybe I was naive enough at the time. It didn't really hit me until, I don't know if you remember, or maybe some of the people in the chat remember, until after the verdict, they interviewed one of the jurors, and she was on CNN speaking, and it was as if she was watching an entirely different trial.
Right.
And I just remember this one moment where she said, I just felt so sorry for that mother. And the interviewer assumed she was talking about Trayvon Martin's mother. And she said, no, I meant, what's the name? Zimmerman's mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, we're just like existing in two different realities, two different worlds. We're not even seeing the same thing.
We're not. So the name Trayvon Martin isn't used in here, but this is kind of an analog of that situation in this storyline. And this guy sort of is an analog for what we sort of thought of as George Zimmerman.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught him. They managed to get him. They tracked him down. What do you call it? Catfished him into showing up so they could capture him. And they do their thing, because it's not just about murdering these guys, it's about torturing them. And I'm not going to go into details as to how they torture their victims, because it's rather graphic, and there's only so far that my fellow Black comic lords will let me go. But read the book if you are so inclined. But I will say this: what was interesting is it's your thought. I'm scared to know what's inside your mind, but your thought patterns on this. They do research, and they said, you know what? The internet's an interesting tool. Did you know there's lots of like dark websites where various subcultured white supremacists will sell various artifacts from white supremacy or slavery? Here's a 200-year-old whip that was used to whip 100 slaves, killed about 7 of them. Here's a weapon that was used to, well, I'm not talking about that one, but suffice to say, they find various artifacts from history that various white supremacists pay a lot of money for. Even in this instance, this guy killed this young Black boy. His gun sold for like, I forget what they said, $200,000.
Yeah.
It was something crazy, like $200,000 to the gun that killed the boy, because there's people out there that collect stuff like this. So they'd actually go ahead and buy some of these artifacts and use those weapons to torture these people, their victims, until they're dead. And they even get them to admit their crimes, which is problematic in and of itself.
Yeah.
When you think about the concept of torture, we talk about that with the Middle East war, and how we had these prisons where soldiers were torturing other soldiers, captured POWs, as a means of getting information. And ultimately, it's proven that torture is an ineffective means of getting information, because ultimately people will say whatever to get out of being tortured. Is that truly an admission if you're torturing someone to admit to something? What does it serve to torture an admission of a crime from these people? Does it serve justice, or does it serve your own purposes? Does it serve your ego? Does it serve your feelings? And these are kind of why your story is so layered, because you're starting to see it's no longer about justice anymore, right? It's about serving themselves. And talk about this moment.
Yeah, I'll just speak personally. Like, if you ask me where I stand on certain things, I'll go ahead and I'll answer it. It's not necessarily what I'm trying to get across in the story. So for me personally, I think, torture is abhorrent. It's one of the most, vicious things a person can do to another human being, me personally. So to think about a person who enjoys torture, or, you know, ask yourself, just at a surface level, at the most basic level, what is the purpose of torturing somebody, especially in this instance, when, not even saying this is the correct way to get information, to torture somebody to get information. They're not even necessarily torturing to get information. They're torturing for fun. They're torturing, excuse my language, for bleep and giggles. So, what's the purpose behind it? Is it really about justice at this point, like you said? Or is it kind of been perverted and taken on another form? Has it manifested? Has it turned into something else?
Yeah. But then one of the things I mentioned before, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Mhm.
And what made issue 2 really twist was the fact that they realized there's copycat killers out there now who are doing the same thing they're doing, but on black folk. It's like dun dun dun, plot twist, which leads us to issue 3, our latest issue. Any significance to these covers other than just being mad dope?
Um, I wouldn't say they're insignificant. It's just, I think that cover, the one that Raza did, of them kind of sort of just looking at the city, just looking kind of sort of at the scope, like they've got everything mapped out. I think there's another hidden layer to that, especially once you read the issue. Like, okay, they think they got everything figured out. Just wait,
And
let's see. They see they think they see where everything is going. They think, they have everything mapped out, and also the reader possibly does too. Let's open up the issue.
again, with the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil mask, or so to speak. I thought it's kind of a cool theme. But yeah, the tides have been turned. Now everything is from Deidre's perspective. Talk about the character of Deidre.
So Deidre, she's a former med student. She's dropped out, and she kind of operates this kind of, bougie medical spa now. Mostly doing fillers and things like that, bleaching booty holes, things of that nature. And she's a little spacey. She's a bit of a she will tell you that she's a disciplined recreational drug user. So her thought process is kind of sort of all over the place. She kind of goes on tangents here and there. But there's a reason why we chose her to be the narrator for issue 3. It sets up a lot of the big turns that you don't necessarily see coming.
Yeah, she has a strange pattern to her lifestyle where she gets with various men just to get stuff from them. Well, when her friends made fun of her and say, "Hey, your dude's name is Sugar Daddy," she's always got a sugar daddy.
Uh,
But in this instance, she's using her latest sugar daddy is one who's helping her get information about uh, the police's efforts to track them down, and information on how they can pick their next victims.
mhm.
Specifically, there's this one guy. What's this guy's name?
I believe his name.
Freddie.
Yeah, Freddie. There we go.
Freddie,
FBI
who's
agent
also
Freddie.
a med school colleague of hers who decides to become an FBI agent. Now, interesting revelation. First of all, I love this just as a complete aside. I'm a big Black Panther fan. This discussion about the movie Black Panther was hella funny.
I sometimes I forget that I was able to sneak that one in there. But yeah,
The whole white savior trope thing. Yeah, it was kind of cool to talk about that. Anyway, as an aside, so Freddie ultimately reveals to her. Guess what we found out? At some of these crimes, we had these artifacts, and they're all tied to this company. and this company would, it's like a larger organization of people that are buying these artifacts. Talk about the significance of that.
Yeah, it's a company. They pretty much they sell these racist artifacts. It's the same website that we saw in the previous issue that they used to, you know, torture the victims and kill the white whale who they were after. You know, this amalgamation of all these injustice characters. It's that same company. So these copycat killers, they're leaving artifacts, these racist artifacts behind. You know, almost sort of like as a way of taunting. And this agent Freddie, who Deidre, you know, just casually sleeps with, you know, she's kind of also picking his mind for information about, you know, the case, and he drops it on her. Hey, you know, we pretty much know, you know, where these artifacts are coming from and how we can track them down. And so she kind of uses that information for her own purposes. But he also lets her in on something else as well. She kind of casually asks about, hey, you know, what about those murders of, you know, all those white supremacists and, you know, those police officers? Like, did you guys get anywhere on that? And he pretty much says, yeah, we kind of sort of, you know, we had a profiler who pretty much knows who they are. You know, he doesn't know their exact identity necessarily, but he's got them profiled. And true enough, he's got them profiled to a T. But that kick, that pull, that adrenaline, that itch is calling. They just can't resist. And so they decide to go on a trip to track down these copycat killers, or at least get a lead on it.
Now,
And
pause right
that takes
there,
us to that.
because I think you skipped over a very, very important point.
Uh-huh.
Freddie reveals that the FBI have profiled them to the point that they even know that it's 3 black women that are doing it. And they're like, yeah, we're getting a good profile as to who these are, but the people higher up put a kibosh on the whole thing. They just deaded the whole investigation on the higher level. That's like a serious red flag. Like, you're going after powerful white supremacists. We're not just talking little street level skinheads. They're going after powerful icons of white supremacy. And the FBI says, hey, let's cut that out. Let's stop this investigation at this point. And this isn't Obama's, you know, civil rights enforcing FBI. This is now the Trump FBI. Why would the Trump FBI say, let's put an end to the investigation? That's like a serious,
you know, spider sense should be tingling at that point.
Should be tingling. Did they decide, hey, let's put a pause on everything? I think not. So they said, hey, let's plan our next murder excursion. Deidre has a moment of clarity or questioning. She's like, are we doing justice? Or are we just doing murder for fun? And, you know, and she's sincere. Like, maybe we're crossing the line. Karen's like, don't overthink it. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. What did this scene represent for you?
I think it kind of, the best way I can probably verbalize it is, it would be almost like a drug addict realizing they have a problem.
Right.
They realize they have a problem. They know it's a problem. And yet they're just like, you know what, I need it too much, you know? I need it too much. And I'm just gonna keep moving forward with what I'm doing. Like, I know I have a problem, but whatever.
With each of these scenes, your sympathy for them, your identification with them lessens more and more. You start out high, as I said, you start with the Malcolm X quote, you talk about the righteous indignation, you talk about seeking justice for these wrongs, and you're like, I can identify with that. Even if I don't agree with it, even if I can't see myself doing that, you can understand where they're coming from and be like, yeah, I can kind of support that. But that support keeps going down. The further the story goes along, the more self-serving these murders become, the more you're revealed about what's really working in these ladies' minds. and how their minds work and what makes them tick and what gives them their kicks. It goes down and down and down. So you had your first spidey senses red flag here. Then they find their town to go after their next guy. And this walking red flag, this waitress in a restaurant in this all white town in Iowa, where these three black women stick out like Idaho. I mean, is there really a difference? These three black women sticking out like sore thumbs in this, they're probably just upped Idaho's black population by at least 20%. And, she starts asking all these questions, and then she's like, hey, I love your hair. Can I take a picture of you? I don't know of any body in general who wouldn't be on pause on that, but this is the scene that irritated me. Because they're so meticulous. They have the tint on the windows of their cars so that the pictures can't be taken of them. They use all these dummy accounts and burner phones and burner credit cards to purchase their items that they use on these crimes. They wipe everything down. They wear gloves and boots and go through all of this to make sure they're not caught. And one little woman comes along and says, hey, can I take your picture? And they just go, yeah, sure. This scene bothered me.
Well, first, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because remember, the book's about expectations. So we don't necessarily know what's going on with this waitress, or if we're even going to see her again. But to your point, it's a very important point, because one thing, if you look at people who kill over a prolonged period of time, serial killers, whatever, they tend to get sloppy.
Yeah.
They tend to get sloppy, and they tend to start taking shortcuts, or they're not on point as much as they used to be the longer that they do it. That level of preciseness, that attention to detail that they initially started with, it tends to dissipate as time goes on and as they do it more and more. So it's not, trust me, your point is absolutely well taken.
The hubris kicks in. So they're driving away from the restaurant, get into this car accident. And this is the scene that was really jarring for me. I remember those two great HBO shows, Lovecraft Country and The Watchmen. And between those two shows, these next visual images reminded me of those shows, because they're in this car accident, and all of a sudden these guys are walking up to them who caused the accident. And it's these images. These caricatures.
They're not officially named in the series, but they're called the Minstrels. That's what that group is called. That's what they call themselves, the Minstrels.
Yeah. They thank you for saying that. They didn't have, the name wasn't mentioned in this issue, but that makes sense. That makes sense. And they know who they are. They know everything about these ladies, right down to their code names.
Back it up. What you said. The point that you wanted to reemphasize: when somebody puts a kibosh on an investigation that they're zeroing in on like that.
Yeah, I agree with iManifesto. The Minstrels are creepy. This kind of bothered me. The visuals and the concept that there are a group of high-end white supremacist, organized, intelligent assassins is disturbing on a level I hadn't really thought about before. Because they're literally the mirror universe version of these three ladies. Like all the meticulousness of how they made their crimes, they picked their victims, how meticulous and on point there were about every detail. These guys do the same thing, but from the other perspective.
Right down to the birthdays.
Right down to the birthdays. They figured out the birthdays. Committing crimes on birthdays of specific figures throughout history. And then they name themselves. I'm Sambo. I didn't do nothing. Mr. Bojangles, Steppen, Mr. Jolson,
The Minstrels.
our baby. I mean, the worst names and caricatures of Black people that we've had in history. And that's what they named themselves.
I'm actually, I don't know if I want to use the word glad, but I appreciate that you said that it disturbed you and it was creepy, because that's absolutely the vibe I was trying to give off with it. That's the atmosphere I was absolutely trying to create with this. I wanted to catch you off guard with the way the issue is structured. You kind of think you know where it's going. You kind of see where it's going. With Deidre's narration, it's kind of like here and there, and then boom, you see that blackface appear.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere. That came out of nowhere. And for those who may not have read the book, I know this is slightly spoilery, but trust me, there's a lot more to come in the subsequent issues, because all this does is introduce who these antagonists are. You still don't know where they're going to go with it. In issues 4 and 5, which are also upcoming. But we do know this. He says immediately, we're not here to kill you. Well, not yet anyway. We want you to keep doing what you're doing. We're big fans of you guys. We love the fact that you're inspiring what will ultimately be a race war in the United States. We are craving the next civil war, which will be a race war. Well, the other one was too. So we're craving civil war, race war number 2. And you guys are help setting it off, because you're making all the white people hate you.
Yeah.
So we're big fans of you, because you're actually adding to our ranks and making our team stronger. So the more you kill, the more we get stronger. We love it. We're going to set you guys free and make sure you keep doing it. And if you stop doing it, we're going to come after you. We can
Then we got a problem.
Who you are, or we can just take you out. And he's just so matter of fact with it. That's what makes it so damn scary. Is they had all this power. They have them literally tied up. It's like, we could kill you right now if we wanted to, but we don't want to. We have a bigger plan in play. And that's what makes it more scary in my mind.
It's funny too that you're using the word scary as well, because I remember the first time I actually saw like old blackface footage. I'm not talking about like the Looney Tune cartoons, but like actual, blackface footage. So like a person actor in blackface, and it was actually scary. Actually, I was obviously smaller child, but it's almost sort of a uncanny valley effect that kind of creeps in there, and it was always something that kind of made my skin crawl.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember that Lovecraft Country episode with the little minstrel girls? That's some of the scariest stuff I've ever seen in my life.
It can be very creepy, yeah.
That just I mean, to this day, that episode just freaked me out. But yeah, they're taking out black people the same way that they were taking out white people. They're like, keep going on. And if you stop, we'll simply take you out.
Keep doing what you do.
This part was also very disturbing. Where he described, where she's like, you just want another civil war. He's like, I prefer to call it the war for white supremacy, which is what it was then and what exactly it will be this time, because make no mistake, whites are the superior race. Quick, name a single country run by black people that's a success. I'll wait. I mean,
Well, these are things you hear in real life. Actually,
Right,
these are
right.
things you
That's
hear
what
in real
makes it
life.
so disturbing.
Yeah.
This is all stuff that you could literally hear. We have mathematics, science, engineering. What do you have? And it's like you want to retort and say, well, technically, we invented mathematics
Uh,
since. Fine. Keep go on with yourself. All y'all got is rap music and basketball. And it's like, oh, white supremacy at its core. It was disturbing. Sorry. That's how issue 3 ends.
mhm.
What can you tell us without being spoilery about what we can expect in issue number 4? Let's start with issue number 4.
So issue number 4 has, you don't ever want to kind of tease or foreshadow a twist because you kind of sort of want it to happen organically. But there's going to be another twist in issue 4 that I assure you nobody is going to see coming. And
Mm.
issue 4, I've said this in several discussions. Issue 4 is the best anything I've ever written, in my opinion. If you were to say, hey, what Sheldon Allen's writing, like what is symbolic of him, give us your best work, give us what you think is your masterpiece. It would be issue 4. It's a personal issue. It's an issue that it's going to be a gut punch for a lot of people. It's going to irritate a lot of people. And then when you get to issue 5, it's going to be it's just going to all come together and coalesce, and it's going to go back to what I wrote in issue 1. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be comfortable with how uncomfortable you're about to become when you see some of the things that happen in issue 4 and issue 5. There's a character in issue 4. He's probably the most unique character I've ever written. You think you're going to have him figured out. You think you're going to know what he's about. And then you're going to hear him speak and you're going to be like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I don't know whose side I'm on. I don't know who I'm rooting for at this point.
Right. Wow. All right. So,
Oh, and sorry,
Dr.
just not
Wizard.
even to cut you off. In issue 5, as you can see, is a bloody cover.
Yeah.
If you didn't see it before, you'll see why in issue 5, why the book is called "They Choose Violence."
Mm. So make sure y'all look. You can still pre-order issues 4 and 5. Highly recommend you do it. Dr. Wizard, let's get into the questions from the chat. All right. Let's start with the first one here. Is this story going to end after only 5 issues? If so, why?
So, no, that's a great question. As of right now, it's over with issue 5. It's not. Um, it's something that I can probably pick up again, as maybe an anthology or something like that. Not even trying to spoil or give away what happens with characters. But as far as I'm concerned, everything that I wanted to say or needed to say or present, I should say rather, that will be done in issue 5. Um, there is a character though. That character, like I said, in issue 4, I would love to come back and do like a one shot with him, or like a mini series with that character. Like
Yeah.
he's just such a unique character. Um, that's something I may decide to do one day down the line. But yeah, issue 5. That's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to say.
Sounds like you reinvented Catcher Freeman or something. I'm looking forward to seeing what this character is. Next question. Does your series touch the Candace Owens black conservative Republican types? Ooh, that would be great.
um, I don't not explicitly. I don't want to spoil too much, but there may or may not be a character that you see like that doesn't necessarily end up being like that.
Mm. Next. Mr. Allen, have you received praise for the issues that you have released?
I assume that I have. Like I've heard things here and there. I know Mark Wade. He said he loved issue 1, which was amazing for me. As you know, dealing with me, and I apologize again. I apologize. I try to stay away from a lot of the online stuff. You know what I mean? Like I kind of just I have a low profile. I've heard only great things that have been relayed to me from the messages that I get online, the DMs, stuff I get from the editor. But I try to stay away from that stuff. I try not to let it influence me one way or another.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
And I think that is all of our questions. So Sheldon, I really appreciate you coming on here, man. This is a dope series, man. It's thought provoking. No matter how you fall on the realm of what these ladies are doing, you cannot argue with the fact this is a thought provoking series. It's definitely something that's worth discussion. And I think it's really well written, man. You've done a fantastic job, and I wish you success. Ivan Infestor asks, "Who's your illustrator?"
Oh wow, his name is Mauricio Compitella. Uh, he's actually based in Argentina. This is our second series that we did together. We did another series before this called Snatch. It's about the human hair trade, where those weaves and extensions really come from. I always
Yeah,
call it. I say it's like traffic, but instead of like coke, it's with hair. That's the way I describe it. So he did that book, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I keep it 100 with you. I was a little apprehensive about working with him on this series, not because he's not an amazing artist. We're like we've got like an unspoken bond. We're in sync. Like whatever I write, he knows exactly how I want to draw it and how I want to illustrate it. But he isn't black. Let's just say what it is. So I wasn't sure he would be able to connect with some of the material or necessarily even understand it. It's one thing to read something, but do you really know what's going on? Do you feel you got to like feel this series? I feel like when you're drawing it, and I remember giving him issue 1, and he went crazy for it, crazier than anything else I've ever given him. And it was crazy to me because you get to see how global, this struggle with racism and things of that nature that we have in the United States. They see it in other countries, believe it or not. Now, how they receive it and their opinions on it, that may differ. But he was very aware of all the references. He was extremely aware of everything that was happening in real time. He would send me stories. Sometimes he would see it before I would see it. So it was like really eye opening. This stuff is projected worldwide.
yeah, yeah. Racism is indeed global. All right, Sheldon. We have a tradition at Black Comic Lords that when you come on the show, where'd he go? Did you delete him, Derek? Derek deleted our guest. Oh, there he goes. I think he's coming back.
I knew it was gonna happen. We with that little message for the producer. Every time I press it, it hits a black button. I apologize.
That's all right, man. I'm just happy we didn't accidentally. We've had an instance where someone got booted by a member
No,
of the
I'm
Black.
good on that. Yeah.
Looking at you, Herschel. Anyway, we have a tradition here at Black Comic Lords that when you interview with us, we consider you family. So, with that being said, we'd like to have you take a look at the screen. Not me, him. There you go. Look at the screen, say your name, and say, "I am a Black Comic Lord."
You give me a countdown, or you just want me to go ahead and do it?
Go ahead and do it.
Hey, this is Sheldon Allen, and I am a proud Black comic lord.
That's what's up. Welcome to the squad.
I'm happy to be here.
Look, and you are welcome back anytime.
Hit me up after issue 5, even if you want me on for just 2 minutes.
Be happy to do so. Bet. And we're gonna link up in Miami too for that game.
Oh yeah, we finna talk. We finna destroy these Gators, man. We finna sell out, and
Okay. All right. Black Comic Lords, we got you.